presented in a quorum call at
It
this
is.
time. I would ask unanimous consent that be terminated.
Without objection.
I now ask unanimous consent that execution of the previous order with respect to S-1387 be delayed until 12:30 p.m. today. That at 12:30, the I be recognized prior to execution of the order, that all provisions of the previous order remain in effect at that time.
Read 31. Read 13.
The last couple of days I've been focused on 1387. It's really 3187.
Objection.
Those are the only two mistakes that have remained on the Senate floor. I would ask consent that we now initiate a quorum call.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Conco. The Senate today will continue work on extending Food and Drug Administration user fees that fund FDA reviews of prescription drugs and medical devices. It also creates a user fee for generic drugs and a national system to track prescription drugs. The Senate is in this week. The House is not. They're out for their district work period. And Senate hearings continue on Capitol Hill. One of them we're covering today is the Foreign Relations Committee. They're hearing about the Law of the Sea Treaty, passed by the United Nations in 1994 and ratified by 160-plus countries. The hearing's underway, and you can follow that on our companion network, C-SPAN 3. It's also online at cspan.org, and we'll have it later for you in our program schedule.
Senator from New Jersey.
Madam President, I have 8 unanimous. I ask that further calling of the roll be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, I have 8 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and the minority leaders, and I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Madam President, I come to the floor today because we dare not stand here while a menace threatens children across our country with too many untested toxic chemicals present in everyday consumer products, products intended for children use like baby bottles and nursery furniture. Many of them contain toxic chemicals that have never been tested for human safety. These chemicals should be tested in industry laboratories, not in our children's bodies. And it's time to update law to protect them. This chart shows some of the moms, many who travel long distances with signs that are demanding safer chemicals now. Many of the moms had little children with them. And we heard a story from one mother who lost a child, and the only reason that they could find is that there were toxic chemicals in the environment in which this child lived. And so they're pleading with us. They're saying, Senators, understand what's taking place here. Threats to our children should not be tolerated in America. These moms are right to be concerned that their families aren't being protected from dangerous chemicals. It's our responsibility, the responsibility of those in the Senate and the House, to join with American parents to fix our broken toxic chemical laws. But until these laws are fixed, toxic chemicals, word toxic is a replacement word for poisonous, toxic. Chemicals will continue to gnaw away at our children's bodies, our health, and their well-being. Studies by CDC scientists found 212 industrial chemicals, including 6 carcinogens coursing through Americans' children's bodies. Toxic chemicals pose significant health risks. Chemical exposure accounts. And this chart really tells a very bad, very sad story. 5% of pediatric cancers, 5% of the children cancers, 10% of diabetes, 10% of Parkinson's disease, 30% of childhood asthma are significant health threats to children. And instead of protecting us from these harmful chemicals, our current law falls short. A law called TSCA. It was designed to eliminate these threats to children's health. It passed in the 1970s. It's so severely flawed that nonpartisan Government Accountability Office testified, and it's, quote, it's a high-risk area of the law. Imagine the law called TSCA because of the fact that it is so severely flawed that it's a high risk of the law. In nearly 35 years, TSCA has allowed EPA to test only 200 chemicals of more than 80,000 chemicals. Thousands of chemicals, new chemicals, are introduced every year in industrial and research facilities, but only 200 over that time. What does that say when you think about the number of children that we have trying to protect 80,000 chemicals and only 200 of them were tested and 4 were banned? Sadly, however, it's hard to believe the chemical industry is fighting to keep the status quo alive at the expense of our lives, our children's lives, our children's health. Just recently, the Chicago Tribune exposed how the industry uses dirty tricks and junk science to drive their public misinformation campaign. They want to mislead the public about what's going on. And their series detailed how the industry repeatedly bullied and lied to state legislatures to prevent common sense reforms. They bankrolled phony experts. A doctor in one instance, prominently, stood up there, defended a chemical material, fire retardant, and they're brought in there to invent stories that spout the company line, all in the service of protecting not the health of children, but protecting their profits. It's a terrible exchange, all at the expense of safety and health. It's clear that chemical manufacturers purposefully hid the dangers of toxic flame retardants. We have a chart here that shows that the average couch, for instance, and here's what we see on this chart, has over 2 pounds of flame retardant chemicals in its foam cushions, chemicals that have been linked to developmental problems and other health risks, so that when one and the President of the Senate now has cautioned us about this as well, that there are discharges when these are compressed that release the toxic chemicals into the air. Scientists have warned us about these chemicals since the 1970s, and yet they show up in household furniture, including baby crib mattresses, high chair cushions. The Chicago Tribune report said that a typical American baby is born with the highest recorded concentrations of flame retardants among infants in the world. But we're not here to just attack chemicals. We're saying sort those out that are necessary and good for our sustainability, but there are hidden in there products that are dangerous, that are contaminants that can bring terrible things to children, terrible health threats. And those materials are used household cleaners to kill germs. They're used in medical equipment that saves lives. Hundreds of useful everyday products contain chemicals, but it's our responsibility to make sure that they're all safe. And today we just don't know what is in the air, the atmosphere, and are poisonous. Here, an example. Everybody recognizes what this is, a baby bottle. And we've all bought them or seen them used for our kids. But chemicals in some baby bottles have been linked to serious health threats. Imagine, as a child takes nourishment, they're taking in substance that can be dangerous to their health, make them sick and worse. When we use these products, the chemical in them can end up in our bodies. In essence, the American public has become a living, breathing repository for chemical substances. And no one should accept this standoff, and most do not. those who are aware of what's taking place don't want to hear any excuses. They say, get rid of these things, let us know what's there so that we can protect our children, shield them from these threats to their health and their well-being. Everyone from some chemical manufacturers to businesses that use chemicals in their products to environmental, labor, and health groups has called for reforming our chemical laws. And we will not wait. I ask my colleagues not to wait here. Join us in this quest to save our children's health, to make sure that they grow up as healthy as we can enable them to do. We will not wait any longer, and we cannot let lobbyists run out the clock. Lobbyists, those are people who, for a fee, will represent almost anybody, but in this case, we're looking at those who bring in good information, a good product, but those who are defending companies that are producing products that are dangerous for all the children who are exposed to them. My bill, the Safe Chemicals Act, lays out a vision for strong, effective, and pragmatic regulation of chemicals. The bill simply requires the chemical makers to prove that their products, their chemical, is safe before they end up in children's bodies by being put into a product that children use. Most of the 1,000 chemicals that we use every day are safe, but this bill will separate the safe chemicals from the ones that are not, the ones that threaten our children and our families. It will ensure that chemicals are tested and that EPA can take unsafe uses of chemicals off the market. Madam President, this bill is common sense. And I'm sure for those who might be listening and those who might read the story, the Chicago Tribune, the research that they did, will find it very difficult to understand why it is we can't take the steps in here in the United States Congress to make their children safe. We do it in all kinds of ways to protect our kids. We want them to be able to grow and develop as children should, healthy kids. Some chemical industry lobbyists say this: the cost of testing all these chemicals would be too high. Talk to a parent. Talk to a parent whose children carry lots of toxics in their bodies already. Talk to the mothers who carry these toxins in their bodies and can transmit them very easily to their children, particularly in pregnancy. So too high has to be judged not by the chemical company making a profit and wanting to make more. We cannot violate our responsibility to the parents and the mothers and fathers and the relatives and the families where little kids live and enjoy life. What about that cost to damage the health there? How high is that cost? I'd like one of these chemical manufacturers, stand up to parents who are worried about the health and the well-being of their children and say that they're not making enough money, they're going to have to pump more of these threatening materials into the atmosphere. What about the cost of the parents who have to pay for the care? The bottom line is this: if we don't act to protect Americans from thousands of toxic chemicals in everyday consumer products, who's going to do it? It's our responsibility. Throughout this process, we've invited input from all sides of this issue, including the chemical industry. And I extend an open invitation to my Republican colleagues. Think about it. Look at it through the eyes of your children, of your families. Think about it. Or would you rather go to the bank with a larger deposit because you're doing something that is a threat to children of any age and any stage? So I ask colleagues from the Republican side to work with us, work with me to fix this broken law. The one thing we will not do, and I know that I speak for many others who are co-sponsoring this legislation, we will not accept inaction. It's time to act. We want to mark up legislation to reform TSCA and move this legislation to the Senate floor where decisions can be made, and opinions of individuals here who may say, no, we'd rather go ahead and enlarge our bank accounts, our cash reserves. Let them say it in front of the public. That's when we'll be conducting the kind of a test that we should be doing here. So we want to move the legislation to the Senate floor, have a vote on it, and hopefully good judgment and good sense will prevail, and this will get through and get to the President's desk so he can sign it and start the process of protecting our kids at no cost. It's time to come together to finally fix this law, protect our family from toxic chemicals. And with that, I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from New York.
I want to thank Senator Lautenberg for his leadership and dedication to protecting our families. And I know why he's concerned. I know because I think about these issues every single day. I washed my son's hair last night in his bath. I want to make sure that the chemicals in that baby shampoo are safe. I put sunblock on him this morning. I want to know that I know what the level of protection of that sunblock actually is. When my other son was sick last week, he had 3 different medications. I need to know what those medications will do for him, if they'll have side effects, what the impact is. This is exactly the question that every parent asks every single day in their normal daily lives. Are the products, are the chemicals, are the things surrounding my family safe? Will they cause harm? Will they cause disease? These are real questions that we have to have answered. So I want to thank Senator Lautenberg for his leadership on the Safe Chemicals Act. Yesterday, hundreds of mothers gathered here in the Capitol, right in front of the Capitol building, with their kids and with advocates from all across the United States to tell Congress one simple thing. It's time to stop playing politics with the health of our families. They remind us that the effectiveness of our nation's chemical regulations is an issue that matters to all of us, every single American, and every single parent who has children. Our families are exposed to a variety of chemicals in every aspect of their daily lives, whether it's the soap we wash our hands with, whether it's the shampoo we wash our children's hair with, whether it's the detergents we put in our clothes washer when we're doing our laundry at night, whether it's detergents we put to wash our dishes. Every day we are bombarded with chemicals in our lives. And understanding how these chemicals impact our health and the health of our families is a growing concern, not just for me, but for constituents all across New York. But because of a very broken and ineffective system, our regulatory agencies aren't able to provide us with enough information. The challenge to our regulatory agencies are faced is a substantial one. Since the Toxic Controlled Substances Act that was enacted in 1976, the EPA has faced the daunting challenge to investigate more than 84,000 chemicals in commerce, and their track record for success has been poor. Of the tens of thousands of chemicals in the marketplace, only 200 have been identified for further investigations, and only 5 have been regulated. Weekly, there are news reports highlighting a new study of chemical concern found in everyday products in our homes, in our schools, in our places of work. These reports have caused growing concern amongst consumers because we've seen links. There's been studies that have linked these chemicals to rising causes of cancer, autism, learning disabilities, diabetes, asthma, obesity, developmental disorders, and infertility. These are the gravest concerns that any family is ever going to face, any one of these. And so we want to know, are the things we're exposed to affecting outcomes? Is there a relationship? As a mother of young children who are most vulnerable to chemical exposure, I'm particularly concerned about what chemicals affect them, their well-being, and their development. One story, Mira Brower, a young girl from Ithaca, died at the age of 4 because of the complications of her brain cancer treatment. Faced with the loss of her daughter, her mother, Christina, founded Mira's movement to make sure that she could raise awareness about pediatric cancers and to serve as a resource for families facing their own battles with these diseases. And after exhaustive study of review that identified potential links between chemicals and our environment and cancers, like the one young Mira had, I believe it's time for Congress to take action. We have a number of amendments today that will, again, enhance the work we're doing. 2 amendments that I care a lot about. One is very simple, just making sure that parents have as much information as possible when there are disclosures that accompany medicine, so you know what all of the impacts could be of that medication. I know that most of my colleagues, and certainly most consumers, didn't realize that the leaflets that come with our prescriptions isn't regulated by anyone. It's usually just written by a contractor. In 1995, the FDA recommended standards to improve the information provided to patients, but by 2008, only about 75% of information patients were receiving met the standards for usefulness. And I just have to say, I met with one mother named Kate, and her personal story about what happened to her son, who was just suffering from allergies and asthma. And when he took a different medication, she saw him go into a depression. She didn't know there could be a relationship. That information was never provided to her. But the pain and loss that she goes through every single day, remembering her son, has really encouraged her to be an advocate for reform, to make sure that every parent has basic information that has some level of accountability so that they know what the implications of all medicines can be. Now, the AARP and Consumer Reports have spent years trying to ensure their patients that when they receive FDA approval, standardized and up-to-date information about their medications will be provided, and they support this amendment that will make that requirement. Consumers basically have a fundamental right to know the risks associated with their prescription medications, and my amendment would give them this knowledge. And then last, and quite simply, we use sunscreen every day. My family, my kids, they have very fair skin. I want to know that the label on that sunscreen is accurate. I just want to know if it has the protection it says it does, and this is an area that desperately needs regulation. I support Senator Reid of Rhode Island's bill to finally give consumers the information they need with regard to sunscreen. So thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity. All America's families basically just have a right to know, are these things safe? Suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.